Chicago, Illinois, the metropolis of the Midwest, the home of the Big Ten, of the Big Ten Network, and for the next 5 days, the epicenter of the Big Ten basketball universe. 13 games on the docket, 13 games to determine a champion of this loaded conference. And with that, we welcome you in. It is Big Ten Today. Great to have you with us for the third straight day. We're coming at you from the roof of our headquarters here at 600 West. We're sponsored by Old National Bank. Dave Revson, Andy Katz, and Trey Demps. Couldn't ask for a better vantage point. We're about a mile west of downtown Chicago. We're about 2 miles east of the United Center, and we are fired up and ready to go on a day we have been waiting for.
I love this. I love the setup. Whoever came up with the idea, bravo. I love that we're on top of the roof here at the Big Ten Network. I can see that way the United Center, got the Sears Tower, or at least that's what it used to be called.
Yeah,
right?
Willis Tower now. Yeah,
when I grew up,
we all call
Sears
it the
Tower.
Sears Tower. Yes.
I got hardy New Englander, Midwesterners around. We got some nice, cool jackets. We're fine, and I love the fact we are here for Champ Week. It's going to be a great event here at the United Center.
I couldn't agree more. It doesn't get any better than this. You got the skyline. I'm with the legend, Dave Revson. I'm with the guru, Andy Katz. I'm just here along for the ride. We got 14 teams playing at a high level right now, competing for a championship. Doesn't get much better than this.
The original, day one, you.
Yeah, that's the truth. I cannot deny that. It has been a great ride. We will keep it going here as we head to our big story and the Big Ten tourney. You look at the bracket: Purdue, Northwestern, Indiana, Michigan State. Those are your double buys. Those teams will not make their tourney debuts until Friday. There are 2 games today: Ohio State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska, and then 2 matchups already set for tomorrow: Rutgers and Michigan, and Penn State and Illinois. We're going to talk about everyone as we run through the course of this show, but let's start by going through the top 4 seeds, and we've been talking about this all week. I mean, there was so much uncertainty up until the final day. One thing that wasn't uncertain was Purdue as the 1 seed. They locked that in the final week of the Big Ten season, ended up winning by 3 games, and so now here they are. What are your thoughts on the Boilermakers as they enter the postseason, not necessarily playing their best basketball?
Well, a couple things, guys, on Purdue. Number one, they have a lot to still play for. Not just a championship to get the regular season and the conference tournament. They are in contention for a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, likely with UCLA. UCLA down without Jalen Clark, the top defensive player in the Pac-12. So we'll see how that plays out in Vegas. So if they win this, I think they're still going to get a number 1 seed. Zach Edey, Big Ten Player of the Year. He's the favorite for National Player of the Year, but that award hasn't been voted on yet. Mm-hmm. It will be over the next week or 2 for Naismith, Wooden, etc. And I'm looking for Zach Edey to take another step up. He has been dominant. He is my National Player of the Year, Big Ten Player of the Year, but he's now on the biggest stage.
Yep.
Carry your team, because I think he has to do even more with such a younger, inexperienced group around him if Purdue is going to win this tournament.
I'm going to take it from a different angle, and I love the fact that this Purdue team is coming in with a chip on their shoulder that I think that they probably have. You talk about Matt Painter, could have probably been co-coach of the year. You talk about the fact that they're 4-4 over their last 8 games. You talk about what you mentioned, that they're playing for a number 1 seed. They only had 1 guy, Zach Edey, making all Big Ten teams. So I think this whole program has something to prove here. And I think a big thing is going to be 3-point shooting over the last 3 games, 25% from 3. You know those double teams are going to come down on Zach Edey. That ball is going to be sprayed around. Guys have to be confident in knocking down shots, and also handling pressure, right? Teams are really starting to pick up Braden Smith. I think Jenkins is going to be a big key in this tournament run, just because he can be another guy that can handle the ball, facilitate, and help them get into their offense.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about their young guards, but of course they have a couple veterans, and Brandon Newman was unbelievable in the game against Illinois. You mentioned Jenkins, who's been around college basketball for years now, a veteran guy, a grad transfer, and so perhaps they lean a little bit more on those guys here as we head into the postseason, because we know it's a guards game, and it is tough to win with freshman guards. Trey, we'll let you get the first word on the 2 seed. The Northwestern Wildcats, as unlikely a story as we've seen, I think, in the entire time we've been doing this, frankly, covering the Big Ten tournament for a team that was picked 13th in the league to end up 2nd in the league. What do you think of the Cats as they head into this tourney?
I think they got a tough route. I mean, you look at who they'll potentially have to play on Friday, Illinois or Penn State, and I think both of those teams present a tough matchup for the Wildcats. You talk about Penn State, one of the best three-point shooting teams in the conference, a team that kind of posts up Jalen Pickett different spots of the floor, and it kind of gives the Wildcats problems in where they send their double teams in the post and how they rotate out of that. And I think in their last matchup, they gave up a ton of open looks from the three-point line. And then you look at the Illini, a team that has a lot of good on-ball defenders. And if they get the Wildcats, they're going to remember what Boo Buie did to them in the last matchup, scoring 35 points. And so I look at this as their road. It's going to be tough for them, but I think that they can do it. I think an X factor for this team is going to be Ty Berry. 8-1 when he scores more than 12 points. I think he could be a guy that can space the floor, take some of the pressure off of Boo Buie.
So, Trey, I was there Sunday and talked to them before the game, obviously after at Rutgers. I was so impressed with the way they bounced back after that Penn State loss. And they did that a number of times this season, their resiliency, because that was such a disheartening loss to lose a game that they probably should have won, the senior night game at Welsh Ryan, and they came out with such a great attitude at Rutgers. They took it right to them, and then in the second half, Boo Buie, he didn't play well in the first half offensively,
right,
and he just went to another gear, and that's what we've seen from Northwestern on those guards. You know, Chase Audish has done that a number of times where he's had to go to that second gear because he's been like 2 for 11 or something, and then he hits big shots later. You're right about their draw is not great, although this whole league is like that. What I'm really looking forward to, if there's ever a time for this tournament to be in Chicago, for Northwestern to play on a Friday night, it's this week. And I know for a fact, hearing from the Big Ten this week, that Northwestern alums in the city and the surrounding area are absolutely pumped, trying to get tickets for Friday night. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of purple rain we will have Friday night at the United Center.
Well, it would really be something, of course, if they play Illinois and
Yes.
go head-to-head. But Northwestern, we know the history in general is not great. The history in this tournament is not great. They've only made it to the semis one time in 2017, but the other way of looking at it is they've never had an NCAA team that hasn't played in the semis, right? They're 1 for 1, and they're clearly an NCAA team this year, so we'll see whether or not they can get there. Indiana is the 3rd seed, Andy, and after Purdue, probably have the best NCAA tourney prospects in terms of the seeding right now. If the Hoosiers were to make a nice run here, they could definitely get themselves a protected seed. They look to be in that spot right now.
Yeah, so similar to what I was saying about Zach Edey, Trace Jackson Davis, he has answered the bell a number of times this season, but I'd love to see him do what he did actually last year, where he raised his game in the Big Ten tournament, got them into the NCAA tournament with his play in winning a couple of games. They ended up losing to the eventual champ, Iowa. But Indiana comes into this tournament, I think, obviously as one of the favorites. The bottom part of the bracket, I think, is a little more favorable for them to get to the final. Jalen Hood-Schifino, overall, this is where I have the advantage of them over Purdue because he's a pro. I mean, yes, he's a freshman like Fletcher Loyer and Braden Smith, but he is an absolute pro, and he can take his game to another level. But I absolutely love the way Trey Galloway has been playing this season. He's the ultimate glue guy. He does everything that Mike Woodson needs him to do, and I think he's going to end up being a huge X factor for Indiana this week.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's all about the complementary pieces when you talk about Indiana. I think you know at this point what you're going to get from Trace Jackson Davis. You know what you're going to get from Jalen Hood-Schifino. Those two guys are top 14 in the league in usage rate. The only team that has 2 guys in the top 15. And so I look at the complementary pieces, a guy like Trey Galloway to take on some of the ball handling responsibilities. I think he's a guy that is made for the bright lights, that embraces challenges, a guy that can get into other teams' best player on the perimeter. Then I also look at Race Thompson, a guy that's playing with a lot more confidence on the offensive end. Late in game situations, the 2-man game between him and TJD and how those 2 guys play off of each other, veterans, guys who have a lot of chemistry with one another, is going to be key for the Hoosiers.
We talked about Northwestern not having a great history in this tournament. Indiana, surprisingly, doesn't have a great history either. This is their 4th time as the 3 seed. The previous 3 times they lost their first game each time, and famously, they have never won the Big Ten tourney.
Well, if you remember, Bob Knight hated this event and didn't want it to exist. So I don't know if that
He's
factors
always
into
a barrel of sunshine,
yes,
wasn't he?
Yeah. Yes. You know, it's interesting. Last year, they had to play with a sense of urgency, a Game 7 type attitude. I'll be interested to see if they take that kind of attitude this week, because I think they need to. I think they need to play with a little more urgency, even though they don't need to win here.
It would help to win. I mean, I think you want to solidify
Yes.
that top 4 seed, certainly for geographic proximity
Right.
as you head into the NCAA tournament. But I hear you. Their backs aren't up against the wall. We're going to get into some teams whose backs are up against the wall in a bit. What about Michigan State as the 4, Trey? I just think this has been weird. Andy, you and I have talked about this a little bit. Like, it just doesn't feel like we've talked about Michigan State this year as much as we have in the past. I mean, they've been arguably the most dominant brand in this league here for the last 25 years. And yet this team kind of stumbled a little bit early, but it feels like they're kind of finding their groove here down the stretch.
And this team is made for March. I love the fact that they're under the radar. And what I love is that they guard the three and they shoot the three better than any team in the Big Ten. And so when you look at that, when you're struggling offensively, when you have guys like Jaden Akins that can knock down 2 threes in a row, Joey Hauser that can knock down a bunch of shots, and they have a ton of options on the offensive end. They can go through Malik Hall if he has a mismatch in the low block. They can go through A.J. Hoggard in ball screen situations. So I look at this Michigan State team with how well they play offense. Even though they've struggled defensively, they do a great job of keeping the ball in front, which is why they're such a good three-point defense, because they don't give up a lot of dribble penetration. They just struggled with guarding the post a little bit. So they get draws where they don't have to play dominant postmen. I really like where this Michigan State team stands.
Think about this. Since Cassius Winston left, they've really struggled offensively the last couple of years, where they didn't have maybe that go-to guy, and they had a lot of scoring droughts. I feel like the last month, that's been erased.
Yep.
I mean, Tyson Walker is playing as well as any lead guard in the country offensively. You're right about Jaden Akins. A.J. Hoggard, yeah, he can be up and down, especially with his turnovers. That has settled down. Hauser's filled his role. The bigs know who they are.
Right.
Just stay there. They're not jacking up threes. If they can play a little bit better D, and obviously outside of that minute and a half against Iowa, I really like Michigan State. Really like, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But, I think Michigan State is coming in here kind of weirdly under the radar.
I know, no, it's very strange because I do think they are just a little bit. But you think about this time of year, we talk about it being a guards game, and you guys have outlined their guards are really good. And a lot of it comes down to three-point shooting. And in Big Ten play, they lead the Big Ten in three-point percentage, and they lead the Big Ten in three-point defense. That's a pretty good combination this time of year. We mentioned Indiana has struggled historically in the tournament. Obviously, exact opposite with Michigan State. No teams wanted more than the Spartans 6
Last time at the United Center, they won.
Michigan State
They beat Michigan.
They did indeed. We will see whether they pull that off again here as we head forward in the Big Ten tourney. Our big stat brought to you by Old National Bank. Pretty straightforward today. Just a quick recent history lesson showing you the last 6 champs in this great event. Remember, the 2020 tourney was canceled after one day due to the COVID pandemic. Michigan and Michigan State have each won 2 of the last 6 tourneys. Iowa's the defending champ. 3 of the last 6 winners have won 4 games, so came from outside of the top 4 seats. All that in mind, fellas, I want to get a favorite from each of you. Mr. Katz, we will start with you.
So the favorite, not my favorite, but the favorite is Purdue.
Well, we understand that. They're the one seed.
I know, but I'm saying...
Thanks for translating.
I know, but I'm just saying that they're the favorite until they get beaten. They're the 1 seed. They have the most dominant player, but now they got to live up to that expectation. Will they? They've got some postseason issues, if we will, over the last couple of years. Yeah, they got to the final last year against Iowa, but it's a game, by the way, they should have won. I mean, they were the better team. We saw what happened after that. Iowa loses to Richmond a couple of days later. This year, they have the best team. They may not have the most talent. What happened in the NCAA tournament last year, losing to St. Peter's. Again, there's some, you talk about chip on the shoulder, there's some postseason chips they got to cash in here, and they should be the team to beat and win it. Whether or not I predict that, stay tuned.
Yeah, you mentioned the fact that they got the best player in the country, and you mentioned the fact that he has something to prove. But I love the fact that this team has guys coming off the bench where they could rest Zach Edey in a tournament-style setting. They got Trey Kaufman-Renn that could come in there and give them great minutes. Caleb First, Mason Gillis, they got a great depth on the interior. And then I think old guards just win tournaments. I mean, you talk about what Brandon Newman was able to do in this tournament last season and kind of propelled them over Penn State and was able to have some good games. Ethan Morton is a lockdown defender. So I look at this team as together. They've been through the fire a little bit. I think if we were to say that this team was, only had 2 losses, they would be coming in kind of feeling themselves a little bit. But I think with the fact that they're 4-4 of their last 8 games, they haven't been playing the best basketball. Now is the time for them to turn it up a notch and be able to take it to the next level, win this tournament.
The one thing I will just say about the 4-4, which is obviously these are the facts, but I will say that their schedule is a little backloaded. And we've seen this season in this league, when you play a team, they catch Northwestern at a good time for Northwestern to play them. They go to Maryland, which, as we know, has been the best team at home this season. Late in the season, Maryland was juiced for that game. And clearly Indiana was playing, I think, better than Purdue at that point, even though that game was at home.
Yep.
So I think the schedule was a little backloaded for Purdue.
Fair enough. They've won 3, or made the finals, I should say, 3 of the last 6 times in the Big Ten tournament. But interestingly, they have only won it 1 time. You think of all the success they've had.
Right.
No one's won the regular season more times historically than Purdue, but just 1 time, 2009. Our colleague Robbie Hummel, of course, named the most outstanding player. What about a dark horse?
Can I use Michigan State as a dark horse? Can a 4
I
seed
sense
be?
you're prepared to do that. I sense
Well, no,
that's about to happen.
Well, the reason I say this is like, yes, they're the 4 seed, but what, on Saturday they could have been,
Right, I know. I almost think like dark horse is everyone's a favorite. Everyone's
Right.
a dark horse.
So like,
The first, like,
don't
9
come at me
seeds.
that a 4 seed is a dark horse, but literally Sunday morning, they could have been, playing in an 8-9 game if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So no one would have questioned that. But it just, to me, the Michigan State, and it's so weird to say this, they have been under the radar for a number of different reasons. They've been inconsistent at times, but I do think that they're not being discussed enough as a potential champion and a team that legitimately could get to Houston. I know that, we usually include them in this conversation, but they haven't been. They haven't been ranked that much this season. They played an unbelievably hard schedule early in this year. But as we discussed earlier on the show, all the pieces are lining up, especially in their guards. We know how Tom Izzo prepares a team for March, and in this tournament, I feel like they are not being discussed enough as a legit champion here and in the NCAA tournament.
Come on, Andy. I mean, Tom Izzo, dark horse. Those two
Okay,
words don't even go. Those phrases don't even come
to
together.
Go on record, because I give you a hard time, my friend. We've known each other for a quarter of a century. Okay, I just wanted to go on record that you said, "Can I use Michigan State as a dark horse?" And I said, "Knock yourself out." And Trey wouldn't let you do it.
Not letting you do
Trey
it.
gave you the business.
But is your definition of a dark horse a non-brand name, or does it have to be a lower seed?
I think it has to. I mean, I look at the brand
Okay,
and
all right.
the resume that Tom Izzo has in this month, and the fact that he's won with teams that have had lower seeds in the NCAA tournament and in the Big Ten tournament. So
Give us a real dark horse.
I'm
Give
giving
me
you
a
a
real
real
one.
dark horse.
All right.
It's going to be Penn State. I think Penn State has the potential here to make a run. I look at their first matchup against Illinois. They've already beaten them twice. That's a tough matchup because Illinois elects to not switch on a lot of stuff. So Jalen Pickett's able to have his way. They're able to get open shots out of their off-ball movement. And then potentially you got the next game, Northwestern, team that you've already beaten if you've had success against. And then potentially after that, you're going to probably get Maryland or Indiana, a team that you've beaten and had success against. So I look at their road to potentially getting into Sunday. They have all the confidence in the world. I love a team that can play small ball at certain points of the game, that can spread the court out. They make almost 11 threes per game. And so I think in a tournament setting, when you have guys like Andrew Funk, you have guys like on the perimeter like Cam Winter that can get hot and get going early, I really like what they have.
I have a good feeling that if we did an exit poll outside the United Center and said definition of a dark horse, Michigan State or Penn State, I would lose resoundingly. I mean, this would be Reagan Mondale-esque if I said, is Michigan State a dark horse or Penn State?
Yeah, I'm not sure you'd even win Minnesota. not to get bogged down in electoral politics history. Lord knows we don't want to go there. What about the matchup you'd most like to see?
All right, I raise you Illinois over Penn State because the matchup I want to see, sorry Nittany Lions, I want to see Illinois Northwestern. I want to see that game Friday night. I want to see the United Center one half orange, one half purple. I love the fact this has become more of a rivalry. We need Northwestern to get better for it to become a rivalry.
Yep.
Great games this year. I hope it continues, and I would love to see that Friday night.
I got Rutgers, Michigan. I think this is
You're getting it.
What?
Your wish has come true. the fairy godmother just came down and said, "Trey Demps, you got it." Yeah.
Rutgers, Michigan is going to be a great game. You got two teams playing for a lot, two bubble teams. And I think if I'm Juwan Howard, I'm just going to let Rutgers shoot the 3-ball. In their last matchup, they only made 4 threes, Rutgers did, and they only shot 5 of 16 from the line. So when in doubt, you can get some fouls in, make Rutgers be a perimeter-oriented team. And I just want to see what what Rutgers has. I mean, they've lost 6 out of their last 8 games. You know, Paul Mulcahy has struggled. Some of their guards have struggled offensively. Can they make Michigan feel uncomfortable on the offensive end? And I think Michigan be able to go through their guards, late game situations? They lost 2 overtime games. Can they be tough enough to win the close games? This is going to be a close one. It's going to be a fun matchup.
No doubt. It should be great. It is important for both those teams.
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to say it's a must-win for Rutgers, but it'd be like a really, really good idea for them to win, and it is to get into the tourney. It's probably a must-win for Michigan. Again, you never know how everything's going to play out, but given where most of the prognosticators think they are right now, Wolverines probably need at least 1 more, maybe 2 more. Back in Chicago, one of the most spectacular settings for a major city in the U.S. on the shores of Lake Michigan. Not necessarily a great day to take a dip in the lake, but it's a good day to be inside watching hoops, which is what a lot of people are to be doing later today. Yesterday, we revealed these award winners on our show. Zach Edey, the Player of the Year. Chris Collins, the Coach of the Year. And Chris Lowry on his staff winning the Assistant Coach of the Year. First time that's ever been handed out. Jalen Hood-Schifino captured Freshman of the Year. A tie for Defensive Player of the Year. Chase Audige and Caleb McConnell, while Peyton Sanford is the 6th Man of the Year. A lot of national awards are going to start to trickle in over the next few weeks as well. The Sporting News revealed its National Player of the Year this morning, and it went to Zach Edey, Big Ten's top scorer and rebounder, top 8 nationally in both categories. First National Player of the Year award for him. I'm sensing it will probably not be his last. And Edey, of course, wins the Big Ten award. Trace Jackson Davis, probably the other guy who I think would have been considered for this, but no great surprise, I assume, for either of you. You feel like that went to the right guy?
Yeah, I mean, go back to Portland probably when Zach Edey really was just dominant against Duke and Gonzaga back-to-back. We've talked about Drew Timmy's comment. I remember watching him. I mean, he looked small, and he was so gassed trying to cover Zach Edey. Kyle Filipkowski from Duke had no chance. That was when it was clear he was going to be a dominant player. You think about last year, we had to share time with Travion Williams. We had no idea that he could handle it by himself. He got in better shape this summer. Footwork, everything about him improved, and he earned this. I mean, there's nothing handed to him.
Yeah, 2 words that I think of: consistent and durable. I mean, this has just been consistent all year long. 22 points per game, 13 rebounds, shooting 61% from the field. But I think the most impressive stat is 48 fouls, 68 blocks. I mean, as a 7'4" center, the IQ that you have to be able to play with when you're playing against some of the best big men, some of the best guards coming in there, to not play without fouling, to affect shots. And I love the fact that he also can finish over both shoulders, and he can finish farther away from the rim. I go back to the NCAA tournament when they were playing against St. Peter's. St. Peter's pushed him out a ton, and he wasn't able to finish some of those hook shots that he normally gets. Now, this year, he went back this past summer, got into the lab, worked on that, and is now able to make shots farther away from the basket.
One other quick comment to make is that, first of all, he's incredibly humble. He's got high character, and he got absolutely beat up. I know it's hard to say, he's 7'4",
right?
But there are scratches, and I mean, everyone was trying to just push him out of the way. The officials were trying to sort of figure out how to officiate him, and he never lost his temper.
Yeah.
He was so even, and there were so many times where he could have been like, stop. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Get away. You know what I mean? He always stayed cool.
I do think that what point you made, Trey, really stands out to me, too, in watching him this year versus last year. Because the whole idea, right, was to try to get him off the block.
Right.
And to be able to hit that shot, even from 2 or 3 feet further away, makes such a difference. I mean, it becomes borderline indefensible. I mean, you can't keep him 15 feet away from the basket, right? So if you can make that shot from 8, 9, 10 feet, it makes a huge difference. What about Chris Collins as the Coach of the Year? We'll let you start here, Trey.
Everybody talks about the defense and the identity shift, but I think one thing I want to talk about with Coach Collins, and something I experienced, is just how much confidence that he gives to his guys, right? You talk about Boo Buie and Chase Audige in particular, the year that they came off of, and the fact that he still believed in those 2 veteran guards to lead them and to kind of, be the catalyst to this, historical run that the Wildcats have had. And just playing for a coach like Coach Collins, he almost at times believes in you more than you believe in yourself. He's always telling you to keep taking the right shots, take good shots, but to continue to be aggressive, right? He's never the type of coach that's going to tell you to shy away or is going to bench you for taking a shot. As long as you're taking the right ones, he's going to continue to play you. And I just love the fact that all the other guys as well, throughout the course of the season have gotten better and improved. I mean, guys like Mac Nicholson have gotten more confident on the offensive end. And I think that is a testament to Coach Collins and just the confidence that he gives guys. I mean, Ty Berry's been able to knock down perimeter shots and be effective in games. And so I just love the job that he's done. Everybody's talked about the defense, but I love the confidence that Coach Collins has given.
And look, this is subjective. You can make the argument for Matt Painter and Kevin Willard, and that'd be fine, and I have no problem with that. But think about what they lost. Okay, Pete Nance goes to North Carolina. Ryan Young goes to Duke. Nobody outside of that locker room thought that they were going to be a postseason team,
right,
let alone an NCAA tournament team, or even have a chance for a bye or a double bye. And then even within the season, okay, they have the Auburn game down in Mexico. They lose by 1 in the low 40s. Then they get blasted by Pitt. And at the time, we didn't think Pitt was very good. And so then they flipped the script within the season. The hire he made of Chris Lowry was a tremendous hire, who ended up winning, by the way, a great honor for the Big Ten to honor Howard Moore like that. And that was an amazing hire to move Brian James to a different position within the staff and being able to manage that staff. I just think everything that he did, knowing that he was a little bit, under pressure for his job. And I think he did a phenomenal job.
It's interesting, Trey, what you were talking about kind of resonated. You think back to Gary Barnett, who, of course, somewhat miraculously turned around the football program, used to use the phrase belief without evidence. There was a lot of belief without evidence in Evanston this year, but of course it came through. So that is the coach of the year. Let's go to our all-conference teams. 7 players in all earned first-team mention from either the coaches or the media. 4 made both teams. Trace Jackson-Davis, Chris Murray, Zach Edey, Jalen Pickett. As for the other spot, the coaches went with Illinois' Terrence Shannon. 2 players tied in the media vote. Michigan's Hunter Dickinson and Boo Buie, who we were just talking about. Second team All-Big Ten, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Cliff Amore, Chase Audige, Jameer Young. Youngest second-team pick of both the coaches in the media. Had been some thought he might be a first-teamer. Tyson Walker, Derek Walker on there as well. First team, second team, what stands out?
Well, first, I'd love to see in the future one team, coaches and media, voting for one team. I think it's a little confusing, for the record, that we've got mixed bag here. I'm very surprised Hunter Dickinson was on this group. And to be honest, Terrence Shannon. I mean, we've on this show, all of us have talked about that 5th spot. Is it Jameer Young or Boo Buie? And so if there was going to be 6 players, those were the 6 that it should have been. In my opinion, that it should have been those 6, without question. I just didn't think Shannon and Dickinson were consistent enough to be on that first team.
Yeah, and just how much guys like Boo Buie and Jameer Young meant to their team. I mean, you look at the numbers, you look at the advanced analytics, the usage rate, how much shots did they provide for other guys on their team, the defensive end. They're having to guard some of the best guards on a nightly basis. And not to take away from Terrence Shannon Jr., because I feel like, his defense is very underrated. He's a very, high-powered offensive player. But I just look at those lead guards and how important they were to their teams. I really felt like Jameer Young should have definitely been on that first team.
I will say this. I always find it's interesting when the coaches have a different opinion than the media. They're the ones who are breaking down film. They're the ones who are going up against these guys. So there's a reason that they put.
But you don't find it confusing?
I'm just saying it's interesting that it's the coaches that put Terrence Shannon on there because they're prepping for these guys. So maybe they see it in a different way than we do. And I'll just say this about Hunter Dickinson. He's in the top 6 in the Big Ten in scoring, rebounding, field goal percentage, and blocks. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I'm not saying he had a bad year.
I know. I'm just saying that's pretty good. Dave Refson, Trey Demps, and Andy Katz were on the roof of our building. We're about equidistant between Lake Michigan, which is in this direction, and the United Center, which is in this direction. It's about 2 miles away. It'd be a nice brisk walk, but why walk it when you have a drone at your disposal? Andy, of course, dabbles in drone operation, as I'm sure you know. He just flew us over there. We're going to check in with our crew at the United Center, led by Mike Hall.
Dave, thank you very much. Here inside the building that Michael Jordan built, it is Bruce Weber, Robbie Hummel, and Mike Hall here, and these guys know what it's like to win in this Big Ten tournament. You won it all in 2009, Most Outstanding Player. You won it all in 2005. Let's focus on this year's tournament. Not that we can't dwell on what you guys did in the past, but we'll focus on this year. What are you most looking forward to in this tournament?
Just the continuation of the chaos. It's been a chaotic season. The close games. I think that from the beginning, I thought when I looked at the league, who was going to win close games and have players to make plays. So that's going to be, you're going to have it here in this 5 days.
How about the fact that Northwestern could have been second or they could have been ninth on the last day of the season, depending on if they won or lost? I think what Coach was talking about with that chaos, how close everyone was together in the middle of the pack, and now we take away home and road. So now you've got the neutral site, so now all bets are off. We'll see. It's going to be a great tournament.
I'm looking forward to the tense nature of bubble games. We have 4 teams in the Big Ten this year that are legitimately on the bubble for the NCAA tournament. How about a player to watch? There's a bunch of people you could pick for this. Someone you think has a chance to really go off this week.
I'm going to go Jalen Pickett. I think he's got a lot to play for, not being selected as a unanimous first-team All-Big Ten selection. I think that is interesting and pretty crazy with the year that he's had. He's going to be an All-American, and he's not a consensus first-team All-Big Ten player. 61 points in 2 games against Illinois. He's had their number. We will see. That's their first opponent. Should be pretty fun to watch Jalen Pickett.
I'm going to go Boo Booey. You know, he wasn't on both the coaches and the media at first team. And to me, he carried them. You know, he carried them late, his maturity, how he developed as a player, his pace. And that was not just from last year to this year. It was during the year, maybe even late in the year.
Yeah, and think about the expectations for Northwestern. Where were they at Media Day in October?
I don't think anyone even talked about it.
You picked them 13?
Oh, I didn't pick them anywhere. I'm just saying they were. No one was.
So you didn't submit your ballot. Well, some media member he is.
They didn't send me a ballot.
Oh.
How about a matchup to watch? Something that we don't see right now, but it could happen either in the championship, in the semis, somewhere along the line.
I'm going to go, if Illinois can get by Penn State playing Northwestern for a 3rd time. Northwestern got the better of them in Evanston, and then Northwestern had built the big lead in Champaign. Boo Booey, 35 points, had a phenomenal effort from beyond the arc. Illinois came storming back. A 3rd matchup in Chicago. Battle of 2 Illinois teams. That could be really fun.
I don't want to bring up Coach Izzo's worst maybe loss in his career, but Iowa-Michigan State game. It's just a few weeks ago, one of the craziest games I've ever seen. It was a 10-point game. I got on a plane with a minute left. My phone went off. I couldn't get it. I landed, and I told my wife, I cannot believe this. She said, what? I said, Michigan State lost. She said they were winning by 10 with a minute left. I said they lost. And guess who called me about 5 minutes later? Tom Izzo. So if they play again, it would be great. And the other game in Lansing was really close.
Yeah, Izzo was calling me a lot throughout the year, too.
Yeah,
I was like, leave me alone, Tom. Yeah, exactly. I started blocking him. I had to. If you're a fan, by the way, of someone who's not a favorite, one of the top 3 or 4 seeds, that's okay. There is a history of lower seeds winning. Remember, just 6 years ago, as an 8 seed, Michigan walked away as the champion. We will have coverage on the Big Ten Network, of course, all week long from here inside the United Center. For now, let's go back out to you, Dave.
Thanks, guys. No traffic with the drone. That's a good thing. Chicago rarity, if you're driving in from out of town, by the way. Allocate a little extra time. You may need it. We're going to enter this tourney with 11 Big Ten teams realistically in the conversation to make the NCAA tourney. 7 of them are locks: Purdue, Indiana, Northwestern, Michigan State, Iowa, Maryland, Illinois. 4 others existing in various states of bubbledom. Mike DeCourcy had 10 in as of this morning, but it's very tenuous with Penn State and Wisconsin. Somewhat tenuous maybe with Rutgers, and Michigan is out as of right now, according to Mike, so they've got some work to do. Let's start by kind of having you with each one of these teams, Andy, assess where they stand. You look like you're poised to say something.
I just want to say one general comment,
Yeah.
because I spoke with Chris Reynolds this morning. He's the
Okay.
chair of the committee.
Yep.
Bradley AD, former
Hoosier.
played in the Final Four in '92
Yes.
with Indiana. Just to remind everyone, there is nowhere on their screen, it used to be a sheet, where it says conference affiliation. So the Big Ten, yes, they could get 10. They could get 11.
Right.
Each team is judged individually. I know the general population doesn't believe that, but it is true. Each team is judged individually. It does not say Big Ten next to it.
Right. Those of us who have been through the exercise
Yes.
kind of know how it goes. That being said, they know what league every team is in. Let's start with Penn State. They have certainly done a lot of good here over the last month to get themselves into contention. What do you think they need to do to stay in the bracket?
I think they're in, even with a loss to Illinois. They've already beaten them twice. I think last week got them in, sort of put up or shut up. They beat Northwestern at the buzzer, then they come back and beat Maryland at home. Those are 2 wins against the field, and that's always a big indicator for the committee. I think they're in regardless.
Well, just to make themselves feel a little bit more comfortable and to beat the Illini, I think it's just consistency on the defensive end that's going to help propel them to feel safe about getting into the NCAA tournament, especially in the interior. I think guys like Jai, Hen, those guys in particular, and Dredd, even when he's out there playing the five, Mahaffey, I think those guys are going to have to, by committee, be able to guard some of the best big men that we have in our league, and then also once they get into the NCAA tournament. So I think it's the interior play, not allowing paint points, just being a presence on the defensive end.
2 straight dramatic wins, as we talked about, beating Northwestern and Maryland. They led for less than 11 minutes combined in those 2 games and still won them. So they're in Dayton, according to Mike. Wisconsin is in Dayton as well. We know about the matchup tonight against Ohio State. What do you need to see from the Badgers?
It's crazy to say that a win over Ohio State doesn't necessarily help you. You got to get it.
Yeah.
You have to get it. We've never had a team, if I'm not mistaken, come from Wednesday making the field. Is that a correct stat?
I don't know.
Okay, I thought that was the case. But anyway, they play Wednesday. They got to beat Ohio State. That's number one. They beat Minnesota. I think even if they lose, they still could get in because of their overall body of work, but it will depend on what happens around the country. They will be sweating Selection Sunday. If they beat Ohio State and then play well against Maryland, they don't have to win, but play well, I think they'll be in.
And they're going to have to lean heavily on their 2 big men, Tyler Wall and Steven Crowd. Those 2 guys combined for 42 points in their last game against Minnesota. Tyler Wall really starting to look like himself again, healthy, aggressive on the low block. And then other guys just playing off of him. Essegian, Carter Gilmore, all those other complementary pieces, Davis playing off of them. They have great cutters. And so I think when I look at that, it's just a matter of playing through your big men, playing through your guys that have gotten you this far, and having other guys be able to knock down perimeter shots and cut and play off of those 2 guys.
6 quad 1 wins for them, just to pick a random example. That's more than Houston, who's going to be a number 1 seed. The metrics hate them, as we know. They are 78th right now in the net. Michigan, I think it's pretty clear they need to win at least 1. 2 would be amazing because that would mean beating Purdue as well.
Yeah, I think that they have to get to Saturday to feel like they have a chance to get in. If they beat Rutgers and lose to Purdue, I don't know if that's enough. The problem with Michigan is the committee will look at how many opportunities you had. And they had so many, and they didn't win any of them. Down
3 quad ones. They got 3 quad ones.
But at the most opportune time, I should say. They lost early in the season to Carolina, to Kentucky and London. And then, look, they had a chance to beat Indiana, not once but twice, Illinois. All these chances, at some point you're like, look, we gave you all the time in the world to do it, and you didn't do it. So that's why, here again, another chance, beat Rutgers. If you beat Purdue, you're probably in.
I'm looking at Jet Howard. I think he's going to be the key to them making a run here in the Big Ten tournament. He has to demand the basketball in late game situations. You can imagine this Rutgers game is going to probably come down to the last 5 minutes of the game. It can't just be Kobe Buffkin and Hunter Dickinson. It has to be Jet Howard demanding the basketball, making plays out of high ball screen situations, being able to play isolation basketball. I think he's going to be the key for Michigan getting to the NCAA tournament.
They have made it 6 straight years. 10 of the last 11 made that great run to the Sweet 16 as an 11 seed last year. So if they get in, we know it's a team that can be dangerous. Again, they go head-to-head with Rutgers tomorrow. The first game, this is a Rutgers team that seemed like a surefire NCAA tournament team a month ago. Things have gone south here, though. They're still in the field for Mike. They're not even in Dayton. So he still has them as an 11 seed. But it still feels like it'd be a really good idea to win.
Yeah, and there was a lot of Rutgers fans talking to me on Sunday night. What do we got to do? What do we got to do? I think if they lose to Michigan, they're going to be sweating. There's always a team that we think and assumes in that ends up being out. I think they'll still make it, but I think if they lose to Michigan, they're going to be in Dayton for the 2nd straight season. If they win, then they can relax, exhale, and feel like they should be in without a problem. But they've got to play better, especially offensively.
I think one way to play better is play like an AAU team. I think they should press the entire game. Maybe get into the 2-2-1 press, run and jump, man-to-man press. They got to pick up full court, make teams uncomfortable on the offensive end to be able to generate some offense in transition situations just because they've struggled so much to score in the half court.
By the way, real quick nugget on this game.
Yes.
If you remember, this was the game. I interviewed both head coaches, 11 a.m. on March 12th, 2020, that didn't happen.
Oh, yeah?
Rutgers, Michigan.
Absolutely. We were doing the pregame show.
Yep, they were on the floor, and it never happened.
Yeah. on the set for that one, a day we will never forget. All right, let's get into these games, fellas. Trey, start with you here on Ohio State and Wisconsin. It's the worst ever seed for both of these historic powerhouses. We've talked about Wisconsin still trying to get into the tournament. What are your keys?
You mentioned it earlier. You got to ride the backs of Crowell and Tyler Wall, especially with Ohio State kind of being undermanned without Zed Key out. You know, they don't have a lot of size. Ohio State doesn't. And so I'm throwing the ball into there almost every possession. And I think from Ohio State's standpoint, I would like to see them push the tempo a little bit, make Wisconsin feel a little bit more uncomfortable, maybe get into that press that has given them success. And I like the fact that Ohio State's gotten a little bit more ball movement as of late. I think Chris Holtman has done a good job of getting more guys involved. And you want to make Wisconsin work on the defensive end and just get them a little bit tired just because they're thin, you know, with their rotations and how much depth they have.
Sense of urgency. This is a Game 7 for Wisconsin. They've had to play, obviously, a couple of these in a row, but I'm really looking forward to seeing that freshman battle, not necessarily like one-on-one, but Bryce Sensabaugh, Connor Esigian, been two of the best freshmen in this league. I'd love to see them take that next step up.
Sixth time they've ever met in the Big Ten tournament. Ohio State has dominated. They are 4-1 in this event all time against the Badgers. Gophers and Huskers, Trey, I don't think anyone wants to play Nebraska right now. I mean, there's several teams that would fall in that category, but certainly in the bottom half, I mean, who in the world wants to play them?
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska is playing some of the best basketball under the Fred Hoiberg era, and they're getting it done on both ends of the floor now. We saw earlier in the year they were getting it done on the defensive end of the floor, you know, when they had those veterans. But then since those guys have been out, they've now started to really get some contributions on the offensive end. Tominaga, Lawrence, and those guys have really been key contributors. And so I look at this game, I think there's a potential in this game to have the most three-point field goal attempts just because of how both these teams play on the defensive end. They really pack the paint. They go under things. They double team. So I think we're going to have a lot of three-point shots. So I think it's going to come down to who makes those three-point shots.
Can I change my pick? Should Nebraska be a dark horse?
They are a dark horse.
I think that's a good dark horse. I think that's a valid one.
I would not be surprised if they're playing Saturday. I mean, I'd be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked.
No.
So they would qualify as a dark horse.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you pick
You have your chance. You have your chance to switch it up right now.
I'd love to see Nebraska as a dark horse. They're playing great, and I'm just going to say this right now. I hope this is not Keisei Tominaga's last Big Ten tournament. Yeah. He could come back next year. I'd love it if he does because I think they could be really good next year. And I just think Tominaga has been great to watch. I hope he has a great tournament.
How awesome was the one more year chant?
I know.
Senior day. That was tremendous.
Who saw that coming in October?
You think about the last 8 games, guys, in a league that is so good defensively. They're shooting 51% from the field. Over 8 games.
Crazy.
It's incredible how good they have been offensively. It should be a ton of fun.
A dark horse.
Watching the Huskers, a legitimate
real dark horse.
Dark horse. The Big Ten Network did a little crowdsourcing, as the kids call it. Getting the fans to let us know some bold predictions for the Big Ten tournament. Here's what people came up with. We chose a few of them. This one comes from Rev DJESQ. Looks to be a Wildcat fan. He has Brooks Barnhizer averaging 20 points per game. Northwestern winning the title. Barnhizer, of course, has been great lately, so it's really not a stretch to think that he would play well. We got a Boilers fan here who likes Penn State in the championship, so along the lines of Trey's prediction. Also says
a Boiler fan is picking Penn State?
Yeah, well, he's just making a prediction.
Okay.
He said Michigan State will struggle behind the arc, and then he got a Huskers fan who's on the Keisei bandwagon. A guy's been phenomenal. He says he averages 25 points, helps the Huskers go to the dance. So to go to the dance, they would need to win it all. Presumably, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you know,
what do we think? Any of those resonate with you guys?
Yes, a lot of them do. And I will say this. You know, Robbie made a great point the other day in the Iowa-Nebraska game. By Nebraska playing Wednesday versus Thursday, that actually helps them get in the NIT.
Right.
Because
get another win.
They can at least be, 500. Yes, I think Keisei Tominaga goes off. Brooks Barnhizer, I think he's going to have a great week. So I'll agree with that.
Yeah, okay. I agree with pretty much all those. We got some really smart fans in the Big Ten, and so I think Brooks. I think the one that I agree with the most is Brooks Barnhizer, potentially averaging 20 points per game. He's a guy that's made for the bright lights. Chris Collins is going to run a ton of plays for him to get them going offensively. I think he's a guy that could average 20.
I did not agree with Michigan State not shooting it well. That was the second half of the.
No. Oh yeah, okay.
I think they're going to shoot it well.
I think they're going to win it.
Yeah, no, you've made that. They're your dark horse. Hey guys, this was a ton of fun. So much fun being up here. You guys want to stay? Maybe have a picnic?
Sure. Yeah. Next year outside in Minneapolis. Let's do it.
Let me know how it goes. We'll see you from the United Center tonight, 6 Eastern, 26th ever Big Ten tournament. First 10 games right here on the Big Ten Network. First 3 days, every single game is here. Wall-to-wall coverage from the moment we go on the air. We will see you tonight.